that's just on 6:30.
Yep, just about.
Yep.
Shall we start?
I'm just going to see, Daniela, if we can turn on the transcript.
Yeah.
So we've got live captions. Brilliant.
All good?
Yep, that's all good. Okay.
Right, we can start. Right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to What It Takes to Own Your Disability event. This is the last event in the 2021-2022 What It Takes Alumni event series, which are organized by our wonderful alumni relations team. Before we commence, I have to give you a note on our virtual housekeeping. So as you've noticed, this talk is being recorded, and the recording will be available on the Alumni YouTube channel in the next few weeks. They will send you a link to the channel and some useful resources in a follow-up email after the event. You can use the chat box to ask questions to the speakers. Your camera and microphone are switched off. If you aren't able to ask a question using the chat, you can also raise your hand during the Q&A, and if selected, ask your question using your microphone and the camera. The alumni team collate your questions throughout the event via the chat box, and the questions will be put to the panel after the main discussion. The event recording, which ends up on YouTube, won't include anything posted in the chat box. You can turn on subtitles if needed in the settings on the desktop version of Teams. And please do bear with us if we experience any connection issues during the event. So this is how we've organized the event. First, we're going to introduce ourselves. Then we're going to talk, the panelists will talk about their experiences at Westminster, and after that, they will talk about their experience after Westminster. We're going to talk about resources, and of course, we'll take your questions at the end. Now, some brief introductions are in order. So I'll start first. My name is Daniela De Silva, and I'm an Academic Engagement Manager for Accessibility and also Academic Professional Development Fellow. Alongside my colleague Claire, I'm a founder and co-chair of the Colleague Disability Network at the university, which aims to promote good practice and reasonable adjustments for disabled colleagues. I'm specialist in neurodiverse conditions with a wealth of experience of providing support for disabled students at the university. My current role focuses on accessible learning environments in the digital context and promoting accessibility in the library and the university. I work closely with academics to endorse inclusive course design, which enhances the student experience. And now over to Claire.
Thanks, Daniela. And thank you all so much for joining us today. It's great to see some names that I recognise, and also obviously to see our three wonderful panellists here today as well. So my name's Claire Robertson. I am a senior lecturer in the College of Liberal Arts and Science, and I specialise in nutrition and public health. Now, I've always been drawn by any opportunity to reach out and provide support for both friends and colleagues, but predominantly in the more recent years with students that have struggled a little bit, not because of anything in their own control, but something that maybe is an expectation of requirement that maybe isn't always quite as easy as we might think. So I'm really delighted today to welcome you all and also to introduce you to our three panellists. All of these panellists are individuals that I've worked really closely with over the last few years, and it's been an absolute delight to work with all of them, as well as several others, some of them that are in the audience today, but huge numbers that aren't with us today. And I hope that they can share their experiences with those of you who haven't had the experience of working directly with them, to help you to realise just how much we've gained from working with each of them over the years. They've really made an amazing opportunity for us as academics. We've learned so much about how to manage disability through them being open enough and honest enough to explain to us what their needs are. And they've also helped a huge number of other students that they've worked alongside to understand the real diversity and opportunity that inclusive teams enables us to develop, because not one of them is without the capacity to achieve fantastic things, and that's what I really want to hear them talk to you about today. but obviously they have an additional full-time job to tackle alongside that with tackling their own disability and the challenges that that throws at them. So I'd like to hand over to each of the panelists in turn to give you a short introduction to themselves. And Andrew, I'd like to start with you if that's possible. Can you just give us a quick introduction to you?
Yeah, so my name's Andrew. I work full-time in the NHS to support primary care as part of the quality team, alongside part-time work as a medical writer. I'm passionate about science communication, and I'd say I've sought to take up as many opportunities as I can to progress in my career to align with these interests. I studied for a BSc in Human and Medical Science at Westminster, and I graduated with a good degree in 2019. I experienced a number of challenges with my epilepsy and the death of my mother during my studies, and as such, I required extensive support from the disability services and my tutor. And that enabled me to achieve the best possible results that I could.
Thank you, Andrew. That's brilliant. Great. Can I hand over straight to Asher straight afterwards to give us an introduction to you, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Asha. I'm currently studying pharmacology, Masters in Pharmacology at King's College. I graduated with a biomedical science degree at Westminster in 2021, and I have moderate to severe bilateral hearing loss.
Thank you, Asher. And Phoebe, finally, do you want to, we'll end on a high here.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. My name is Phoebe Rohmann and I'm a recent biomedical science graduate from Westminster. I currently work as an MLA in North Middlesex, and I'm hoping to train as a biomedical scientist in the future. I was born with a severe to profound hearing loss in both ears. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you all. It's really lovely to hear you sort of talk about your background and just to situate the conversations that we want to have today. So to start off with, what we'd like to really do is to get a bit of information or a bit of feedback from you all about your experiences while you were with us at Westminster as a student. A lot of people in the audience are students or have been students, so we've got new graduates here as well. And so what I'd like to do is ask you various different questions about that experience. Obviously, please just remember while I'm asking things, you don't need to use the perfect words, the perfect terminology. If you lose yourself as you're going through, no concerns with that at all. Or if you want to take a break and then we can go to somebody else first, that's also completely fine. So I know you all personally, and I know a lot about your background stories, but I'd love you to just recount what you feel able to everyone else here, and to let us know how your experiences with your disability impacted how you felt before you started to study at the University of Westminster. So I'd really like to start with Andrew again, because your story is quite complex. And I wonder if you could give us the first answer here, please.
Well, before I started, before I went to the university, I was quite anxious about it because I have a type of epilepsy that was the result of a malignant brain tumor. And it was the mental side as well as the side to do with knowing how I would manage if I was to have a seizure at university. And also I feel as though there's still quite a lot of ignorance about epilepsy. People are either freaked out by it or they just don't understand, so they don't know how to react. And so I found that quite difficult as well, just having people understand what my kind of tolerance to having sensory overload would be, which is, that was an issue for me. But yeah, it's mainly just that apprehension that I felt. And also I feel like that feeling of not knowing what happens after you've disclosed your disability as well.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. I think all of us probably can, irrespective of whether there's a disability present or not, that just fear of something new and unknown. Did you find everything similar, Asher, that you had a similar experience, or?
Yeah, I was very anxious because I didn't know what to expect. I was worried about the support I would get because in my previous education, I had the teacher of the deaf to constantly check on me. So I didn't know what to expect, like going to university.
Thank you. And Phoebe, your situation was quite different because you started in the second year, so you were a direct entry to level 5 of your degree. So you were arriving and everybody had already made their early connections. So how did you find fitting into that? Because I'm sure that the anxiety was quite high there already.
Yes, I transferred from University of Greenwich to Westminster, and my experience there in my first year wasn't quite as positive as I expected. To get support was quite hard. To even communicate with the people I needed to was hard in itself because I wasn't able to get a meeting with them. So moving to Westminster, I was feeling anxious as if is it going to be similar? Will it be easier? And also I found that talking about my disability and what I need and what sort of adjustment I need, I find it hard to explain, and sometimes people reacting to all that can, you don't know what to expect. Some people will be really nice and open-minded and, really try to understand what is it you need, and other people tend to be like, well, you're deaf, how did that affect your education? I feel like you're having to prove yourself and you feel a bit like a fraud. So it's all a bit of like, okay, what am I going to expect? It's nerve-wracking.
I bet it is. And how did you find things, Phoebe, when you arrived? Did you get the support that you needed and wanted or expected, or did you find it still challenging at Westminster?
So my initial experiences?
Yeah.
It was really great. I mean, when I moved in my first week alone, I was contacted by my disability advisors, my lecturers, and personal tutors. I was emailed by all of them in the first week, asking to meet up, let's talk about what support you need, the adjustment. That alone made me feel really great and included, and it gave me that boost of confidence. But when I could go to lectures, I can talk to them about how, I need to lip read them or any other adjustment I might need. And I felt a bit more confident in sharing that I was deaf to other people. And in that same week, I got to meet Asha, who was also deaf. So it was nice to have someone there that was going through similar situation and we could rely on each other. And yeah, it was really nice, really good.
That's fantastic. And I can say hand on heart that Asher set a fantastic precedent because she was so empowering for all deaf students with approaching us and asking for the types of adjustments that she needed, and never with any anxiety, or it certainly never came across to me as there being any anxiety. So Asher, how did you find it, knowing obviously you'd had to go through this and be the only deaf student in that cohort, and then all of a sudden a year later you had someone else? Did that help?
Oh, yes, it did. Like when I met Phoebe, we instantly connected and we could relate to so many things. And it was just nice knowing someone who's going through the same things as me. Honestly, Phoebe is a friend for life. But when I first started Westminster, before I started, I was contacted by the disability team in the summer, so I had to go into Cavendish campus, and my disability advisor, he sat down with me and we spoke about like the support that I would need. And I felt less anxious because it made me think that the disability team was so organized. And also I felt so welcome when I received an email from you, Claire. That just made me feel like really good, because sometimes it's scary not knowing what's going to happen. And I think I was mostly worried about how I would hear the lecturer in a large theatre hall. So yeah, that was, difficult.
Brilliant, thank you. It's really interesting to hear your perspective for both disabled students with similar disabilities, obviously not at all the same. There's always heterogeneity and individuality in your experiences. So Andrea, I'm just wondering if your experiences were similar. Obviously with your disability it's not quite as openly visual, and so I do wonder whether or not that's led to different challenges.
Yeah, I think I really struggled in my first year because there was a problem where the disability services were short-staffed, and I'm naturally quite introverted, and when I experienced the focal seizures I was having, it can make you feel quite tired and depressed and not really wanting to seek any help. But then eventually, when things were in place and I could get the support that I needed, it made a huge difference. And I was able to have regular check-ins, which sometimes I might not have wanted to go, but the thing that I liked about them is that it didn't feel like I was just a number. I had really just support in a way that I felt like they really cared about and prioritized the well-being of and the achievements of staff with disabilities. So yeah, once that was in place, just it was so much easier, and I was able to achieve what I wanted to at university. So it made a massive difference, and I was able to learn about things that I wasn't aware of when I was apprehensive about my employment prospects. So I was introduced to the Change 100 program, which I would recommend for everyone. It's just an incredible opportunity where students with disabilities can apply for a summer internship program where it's a paid internship, and it just really, I think there are concerns that students with disabilities might have with applying for work and gaps in their CV and all of these things that you have to think about how to address, and that just boosted my confidence massively applying for Change 100, and I was successful with my application, but I didn't, even though I didn't get work from it, just the whole process was, which I received a lot of support with from the disability services, the whole process was invaluable for me to understand how to succeed in an application process when you're looking for jobs as someone with a disability.
That's really insightful. Thank you all for sharing those experiences. It really does help us to get a bit of perspective about your situation and how that's helped. You've all reflected in different ways in your answers about types of different support that you've had, whether that's from one another, from your personal tutor, or even college lecturers. I was just wondering, from a perspective as an academic, sometimes as watching a student within a teaching situation, when we're using collaborative experiences, it can sometimes be very difficult to put your point across in a taught session when you're taking a little bit longer to think about the types of things that you want to communicate. And I just wondered if you'd had any support or any advice for anyone watching today about how you manage difficulties like that, just taking the time, sort of realizing the power of silence before actually responding or getting involved, for example. Asher, do you have any?
Claire, can you repeat the question again, please?
Of course. So in an interaction, so if a lecturer asks a question to the group and you want to answer, did you find it easy to be able to respond in real time or to have your voice heard in a discussion, or did you overcome any challenges linked to that?
I think like at the beginning of my degree, I wasn't as confident as I was in third year. So I feel like my confidence grew with time. But initially, I wouldn't participate as much because I just felt, I don't know, like there was just, I didn't feel that much, I didn't feel confident. So I didn't always like participate. But yeah, can you repeat the question again, please?
That's absolutely right. You're absolutely explaining it. I often hear that students, even within a session like right now, you're thinking of a question, but you don't know how to communicate it in the here and now. So immediately to respond. And I just wondered whether that was something that you could relate to, and you have any comments on or feedback for any of the listeners. So Andrew, I remember you did a problem-based learning module, which was very much student-led and interactive discussion. How did you find that with your disability? How did you find that interaction?
I found it very difficult because sometimes I have difficulty finding words and concentrating for long periods of time. So in the end, I just had to make sure that I was able to have more time to answer questions and to have breaks. And once that was in place, it was fine. But you don't want to be, you have to make sure that you do that in a way that you're not seeing as being singled out or having special treatment in any way. But I had that dialogue with my, with the person who was facilitating that, those sessions, and that really helped.
Brilliant.
I think. And before that, I think I was hesitant about having those conversations, but I think it's really important.
It's really great. And Phoebe, did you have any similar experiences? I know you've done lots of physiology and things as well. Did you find any particular ways around managing those sorts of difficulties?
I could relate to both Asher and Andrew when they were saying that lacking confidence and taking time to really process what's going on in real time. I do find that often, especially in group work, when the lecturer will answer a question, it will take me a bit longer to actually understand and form my answers. So I was always a bit afraid to answer, because what if I misheard the question and I don't answer it correctly? So that was a bit of an anxiety for me then. But in medical physiology, my lecturer then, she knew about my disability, and from the set on, I remember she, with my permission, she sort of disclosed it to everyone, so everyone knew about my disability, and that way it put less pressure on me. If I did get asked questions, I could, I felt more confident saying, could I come back later? And, they knew about my difficulties, and it just made me more comfortable. Yeah.
That's brilliant, and sounds like fantastic teaching practice that a lot of our colleagues could learn from, which is wonderful as well. Thank you. So just one final question from me on your experiences studying at Westminster. If you were looking back at everything that you experienced while you were a student with us, what would you reflect on? So what are the positives or the negatives of your experiences? Is there one thing that you might want to tell everyone about? Asher?
Yeah, my experience at Westminster was amazing. If I could relive the 3 years I had at Westminster, I would. Because I feel like my confidence grew so much. I was more open about my hearing loss. Like I wasn't as shy, like to tell people about it. And because my student plan was in place, I didn't feel my learning was impacted, and it's the reason why that I did well in my studies. And I'm extremely grateful for the disability team for all their support.
Thank you, Asher. What about you, Andrew? What would you reflect on from your times?
Well, for me, it's about that personal touch and having those regular check-ins. For me, it was just so important because, as I say, I'm naturally quite introverted, and also dealing with the mental trauma that I had. You might want to go into your shell and not be open about how you're feeling or how it's affecting you. And so if you have those regular appointments in place, then I think that helps massively. If you're in that frame of mind, then you might not want to seek help or have any mitigating circumstances or anything like that.
Thank you. And what about you, Phoebe?
Studying at Westminster has been a great time. I agree with Asha. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would. I'm really thankful and grateful to everyone who have supported me, because I felt like I've grown as a person from starting there as a shy, introverted, sort of not confident about our disability sort of person. I came out confident and feeling really comfortable in myself and proud of myself as well, because you know that it wasn't easy and I got through it. And I'm also grateful that I got to study at Westminster, because I know for me, a lot of the students, they don't get support when they start uni. So I'm glad to see Westminster taking that step forward and making it an inclusive space for all students, and it makes a positive impact on the student as well in the studies, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So I'm going to hand over to Daniela now and be quiet in the background for a change.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Thank you very much. And now it was lovely to hear about your experiences during your studies at Westminster. And now we're going to turn our discussion to what happened after Westminster. You all graduated. And should we start with Asha? So what happened after your graduation in 2021?
So I knew that I didn't want to leave education just yet and go into work. So I decided to apply for a master's in pharmacology at King's College, which is very close to me and very convenient. And the reason why I chose pharmacology is because in my first year at Westminster, there was a module I did called Fundamentals of Pharmacology, and that sort of stemmed my interest in pharmacology. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. And Bibi, what did you do after Westminster?
So I'm currently working after I graduated. I wasn't quite sure if I would want to continue and do masters, so I went into sort of getting experience first, making sure that I do like what I'm going into. So I started working as an MLA in my local hospital, and I'm now working in the biochemistry department, where I'm involved with preparing the samples and getting them tested and analyzed and stuff.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's great. And Andrew, how about you? What happened after Westminster?
Well, I got some lab experience at Imperial College London, which was great. But then I realized that the lab environment actually can be a trigger for my seizures. So I reflected on my time at Westminster doing a work experience module, and we had a session on medical writing, and it's always been a passion of mine to do science communication, to the point where at the university I actually used the normally vacant radio studio at Cavendish to have my own kind of radio show on there. But I decided, after realizing or thinking that maybe I couldn't continue with lab work, and also the fact that if I was to apply for lab assistant roles or anything similar, it might be difficult for me with all of the competition with students who don't have disabilities. So I decided to work on my writing. I submitted a few articles to different places. And then I took up a position as an editor for the International Brain Tumour Alliance. And I've done other bits and pieces as a freelance medical writer for different organizations. And then I applied for various positions within the NHS, and many times I was told I didn't have enough experience, and I was overqualified. But eventually I found something, and then that's what I'm doing now, full time. But then I do the medical writing part time, and it's actually a great mix because I'm working from home, which I'd say it's a good thing to do if you have it. It's kind of it's a good moment and a bad moment at the same time, where we're able to have this kind of flexible working. It's benefited me, but then I miss the social aspect of that. But I think for people with different types of disability, it can be a benefit. Yeah. And the medical writing allows me to be flexible as well, because I can do that in my own time. I think that with the type of disability I have, it's about maximizing your opportunities and being able to adapt. So I make the most of what I learned in that work experience module, or how to manage my LinkedIn account. And I've had recruiters approach me from that, which I think just is an invaluable thing to learn. And also the confidence that I got from how to manage with those things through the Change 100 program.
Yeah.
And organizations like Employability, which I learned about through university as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really nice to hear. And now my next question is, how did your experience at Westminster compare to your experience afterwards? Phoebe, what would you say about that?
It's difficult because at university you know that you are in a supported environment with people who are aware about your disability and they know how to support you. But once you're out of that, it's a bit daunting because you're on your own. But again, Westminster did prepare me for it. I took part in multiple employability program, and I've had several meetings with the career advisors and my personal tutors about how to prepare for job interviews, how to get my LinkedIn account, and how to disclose my disability. Do I need to? Do I don't? So having all of that conversation really did help me feel a bit more prepared, and it made it easier to progress to the next stage. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. And Asha? How can you compare the experience at Westminster with the experience that you have now at King's College?
I feel the support I'm getting now from King's is not as great as it was at Westminster. perhaps they should take a leaf from Westminster's book.
Thank you.
I think for me, when it came to like creating my student support plan, my disability advisor, she kept using the wrong wording to describe my disability. Like, for example, she would write, Asha may need additional time or may need help with her hearing. And to me, I just felt like she didn't take time to understand my disability and the support that I need, because my disability is permanent. Like, it doesn't fluctuate. I will always need support regarding my hearing loss. So, but eventually, after like many emails, I was happy with my support plan in the end. And also another thing that I had to adjust to at King is that they don't give 1 week extra time for coursework, which was something that was available to me at Westminster. So I did have to get used to that. Yeah. But I do feel like the only thing I like about King's over Westminster is how close it is to me. Yeah, I feel like commuting to Westminster was a bit of a problem. Yeah.
Thank you, Asha. That's a fair judgment. Okay, and how about Andrew? How about you? How was your experience at Westminster compared to your experience after that?
I'd say it's very challenging managing 2 jobs with my disabilities, especially the medical writing, because it's quite high pressured with tight deadlines and it's less secure. But I'd say in the NHS, in my role, it's been very good because there's a disability staff network.
Brilliant.
And that's been very helpful, but then you still get problems if you have to take time off, because there's lots of pressures and the NHS is under quite a lot of strain. So it can be a challenge to get the support that you need. And in my case, I've had a few incidences where I've had to explain myself and it feels like an interrogation, and I've had to get help from the disability staff network to make sure that I wasn't just that things were handled in the correct way. And I think with the medical writing side of it, my passion for it gets me through, even though it can be quite challenging at times with the deadlines.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. That's really nice to hear. And in your current role, so we know Asha is still studying and Bibi and Andrea are working. So have you sought support openly in your current role? Bibi, have you asked your employer for any support?
With my role, there isn't really any aspect of it that I struggle because of my disability, apart from taking the phone. I cannot understand or hear on the phone. So from the get-go, I was open about it to my manager that I cannot take the phone. And really kind about it. And I was lucky in the sense that my manager was already deaf aware. He had experience of working with deaf individuals, so that was reassuring. And he was always checking on me, are you adapting okay, is there any adjustment that you need? So that again made me really comfortable at work. And my teammate as well, they, making conscious effort to learn more about my disability and how to support me. So all of that really contribute to the progress that I'm making at work.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, Bibi. I'm glad you're working in a very supportive environment. That's great. And Asha, how about, you already told us something about King's, but how is it, when you're studying with the other students?
Yeah, I feel like my course mates and lecturers are very supportive. They make sure to face me so I can read their lips, and they're aware of the radio aid that I use to help with my hearing loss. But also in semester 1, all our classes were on campus, and it was very difficult because everyone was wearing masks. So I found that difficult, but but the lecturers, they wear a visor so I can read their lips, which I found very helpful. But I think it was very difficult in lab practicals because we work in groups, and most of the students on my course are international students, and English is not their first language, so it was difficult communicating with them as well as trying to hear what they're saying as well.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Asha. That's all valid, and it has happened to many of our students here as well. And Andrew, so you mentioned briefly that you've sought support from the, Disabled Colleagues Network at your work, but how about, any other support?
Yeah, well, I have an agreement with my line manager to allow me to have more time, more protected time in my calendar, which is just a massive help, and to not need to always have my camera on during long meetings. But I would say even in the NHS, there's an ignorance about epilepsy, even though it's a very common condition. I feel like there needs to be better training, because there's still this idea that all epilepsy is the same, and it's just this kind of image you see on TV of people writhing about on the floor. There's so many different types of seizures you can have. It's just the understanding of that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Andrew. Yeah, that's absolutely, you're absolutely right that I think managers and, anybody who is who is an employer need actually a more disability awareness across the different disabilities. Okay, so we're going on to the next question. Is there anything you wish people knew, or a change which would make your experience easier? Asha?
I don't think there's anything I would change about my experience, but the advice I can give to students with disabilities is that to be open about your disability and to never be ashamed of it, and just if you need help, just ask for it. Because I feel like if I wasn't, because when I first started Westminster, I would email every lecturer before the lecturer, telling them that I use a radio aid and for them how to wear it and stuff like that. And I felt like doing that made me feel less anxious, because I know that they know about it. But sometimes the lecturer who was meant to teach that day doesn't turn up, and it's a different lecturer, I would have to go up to them and tell them. So I think just be open about it. It just makes things so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks, Asha. And Andrew, how about you? Is there anything you wish people knew?
Well, I'd say just what I said before about knowing how epilepsy presents itself, but also I'd echo what Asha said about letting in the student kind of area, just letting lecturers know about the requirements, because for me it was that I'd often need to have lectures recorded. And so I think Westminster is actually really good at doing that. But yeah, that was something that I needed in place. And just about being more open, the only thing I would have changed is to be more open earlier, because when things were in place, it was really good.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. And now we said we're going to spend some time talking about useful resources, or we can call them strategies, or more advice that you might have for our for our audience today? Does anybody have any useful strategies or resources? I think, Asha, you mentioned something about Otter. Was it Otter?
Yeah, so in my second and third year at Westminster, our lessons were online. So, and on Blackboard, there was no like subtitles. So it was very difficult to hear the lecturers if they didn't turn on their cameras. But majority of the time they did put their cameras on. But I feel like Otter was very useful because it transcribes like in live time. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll put the link for otter.com. You can try the free version. It's really, really good. I use it all the time as well. It's a really good, a free software which is basically speech to text. Yeah. And Phoebe, do you have any strategies, any software that you've used, resources?
In my final year, to prepare myself for after graduation, I got involved with a lot of different programs that were going on at the time. For example, the Westminster Working Culture, it's an employability program, and what they do is that they connect you with professionals in different fields, and you were able to listen to their journey of how they got to where they are now. And they spoke a lot about professional and personal development, and it was really useful and what I needed at the time, because in my final year I was very confused and lost into what I was going into afterwards, and I felt like I was alone in that. But by going through that program, a lot of the professionals were saying that even after uni I did not have a plan. So they made you feel like it was okay to just take small steps and, just figure out what you like. So I really liked that, and I even became an ambassador of the program after that. I also got involved with the mentoring scheme, which was helpful. I knew at the time that I wanted to go into biomedical science. So in the mentoring scheme, they matched me up with a senior BMS. And what that helped is that they helped to break down the steps into how to become one, and the different route you can take into it as well. And also I got to ask questions relating to my disability. Have you ever had a deaf MLA? How did you work with them? What would you like? So for them to speak about it, and, for them to tell me that it's okay, being deaf wouldn't stop you going in that route, because it wouldn't affect your work. It's very, that really reassured me. Other stuff I would say, the co-creator project as well, which again I love doing. Every week we meet up and talk about our personal experience. So it was a safe space for me to sort of talk and have my opinion heard. So just getting involved in a lot of things and trying out new things as well, I think it's great to do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phoebe. And yeah, we enjoyed working with you and Asha on the Co-Creators project, didn't we, Claire?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lovely project. Okay, and Andrew, any tips, strategies, resources from you?
I'd sound like a broken record now, but I would mention Change 100 again, because
Fine.
I just had a great experience. Also, it's worth mentioning that it's not just for current students, it's for recent graduates as well. So if you're having that rabbit in the headlights feeling after you've graduated, it gives you an opportunity to allay some of those apprehensions about finding work as someone who's managing any kind of, or living with any kind of disability. So yeah, I'd recommend that. Also, while you're in university, join as many societies as possible, because there's so many great academic and non-academic societies that can really establish those opportunities and networks.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. And I have to mention, because we talked about this yesterday, Andrew. Andrew actually introduced to the university the Ability magazine. Yes, it was his initiative for the library to subscribe to this magazine, and I did check, and students can still look up articles in the Ability magazine. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you for that.
It's really brilliant. It's been absolutely lovely to hear about all your experiences. It really has, and your hints and tips. Hayden's been brilliantly putting the links to various different things down the side, and we will put that together into a single document just so that everything's in one place for everyone from today. I'm just having a quick look at some of the comments and questions that have come up from the audience. Thank you for so many wonderful questions. And I'd just like to put some of those to you guys while we're moving forward a little bit. There's so many different things that you could be asked or could be answered here. So one of the first ones, so linked to during your studies, someone has asked whether or not as you were progressing through your studies, whether it showed, so when you're thinking about how academically capable you are, that there was any tendency for academics to disregard all the struggles that you go through linked to your disability, and whether or not that changed the amount of support that you were offered. Did you ever feel that you were on the receiving end of almost, oh, she's absolutely fine, or he's absolutely fine, they don't need that? Asher?
Yeah, this is something I can relate to. But I didn't experience it at Westminster, but in secondary school, like I had a few teachers who didn't understand like why a deaf student needed extra time in an exam. And I remember one day I heard a teacher talking about me behind my back and saying, oh, I don't understand why she needs extra time. And I just remember going to the Senko, the special, to the Senko, and I was just crying because it just made me feel like they don't like see my disability. So so I think for me, just keep telling those people about your disability, and somehow they will see the support that you need.
Thank you, Asher. I think it's really difficult, isn't it, to feel that you're having to defend a requirement that legally is a requirement, but also it's more about a sort of fear, I think, sometimes that, well, how come she's doing so well? It's only because of that additional time. And I think it would be irrespective of that additional time, but it's evening the playing field, and I think that's so important. So I think in response to that question, I think it's very much about feeling confident enough to know that you're not asking for something that makes you get an advantage. It's just starting on an even playing field, which I think is really important there. So one of the other questions in terms of during your studies that we've had is that, did you think that studying part-time and experiencing different approaches between the university and employer with regard sort of respecting and acknowledging your disability would be something that you'd struggle with? So obviously, Andrew, particularly maybe, because you've worked in two different jobs at the same time rather than studies, obviously, did you find it difficult to sort of get that level of mutual respect that we expect all your time on this job as opposed to splitting it between two different things?
Well, I'm doing one job full-time and one job part-time, so it's not like, it's just when I finish one job, I start the other. So there's not really any adjustment there. It's just, it's just with the writing, it's more flexible because I don't have to do it every evening. I can focus on it at the weekend if I want. But I think if it was a traditional part-time job where I had to be somewhere and I had to do that work at that specific time, then I'd really struggle with it. I wouldn't be able to do it. The only reason I'm able to do one job part-time and one full-time is because one is quite flexible.
Which is obviously a real positive, because I struggle to do one job properly or completely because I keep taking on new things. So it's big respect from my in terms of how you manage that, Andrew, which is great. Okay, I'm going to move on to a slightly different area this time. Somebody's asked about the sort of work and studies approach a little bit and thinking about disclosure. So when you consider disclosing your disability to a potential employer or even to the university, what sort of response did you get? How did you find that gave you more or less confidence with the disclosure process? How do you feel about that, and how would you recommend others maybe approach that? Asher, do you want to? Because obviously this would be a university thing.
Yeah, with Westminster, it was very easy to disclose my disability. I felt like the disability team were very welcoming, and they accepted who I was, and they tried to give me the best support that I could get. Whereas at King's now, I just feel it was easy to disclose my disability, but I just feel like I had to work harder for them to understand my needs. Yeah, so I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like, because at King's, even though you have a disability, you still have to show proof that you need extra time. And I've forgotten I think it's called the PAA team. So I had to send them proof that I have a disability and stuff like that. And I just feel like that's very draining. Like when I've had this sort of support at my previous university, but you have to do more to prove it. So yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, we did a lot of work to make sure that it was one single report, and then that spilled off into everyone else when Alex was in charge. And I think, I don't think we actually ever really truly understand that difference. So hearing that it's working is obviously fantastic feedback that we can give to Dave and Carmel and the team in disability support. So thank you for that. And I hope whoever asked the question that you've done that obviously at Westminster, and that you can keep reinforcing that. Why do I keep having to do this? Because once I've done it once, that should be enough. So BB, did you have similar experiences in terms of disclosure? Any difficulties with that?
Yeah, the same with Asha. At Westminster, it's very easy to tell them and talk to them about it because they approached me first, so I would already felt comfortable because they've done that hard step for me, the first sort of, so I was able to talk to them, and I can tell that they were truly listening to what I was saying, and they did care. Whereas at Greenwich, the lack of communication, it sort of closed me off because I felt like even if I do say it, there was no point. So I do, now I know that being more open about it, like you said, voicing it out is really important because at the end of the day, it helped me, and it helped. If I need the support to succeed, to progress, I do need it. It's not a matter of putting me above everyone else and getting that slight advantage. It's not about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sort of reminds me of just one of the other questions, actually, that often the way that the disclosure process works can feel a bit like an interrogation, that I've got to prove that, I've got to explain what I need, why I need it. How did you manage that process, or how have you managed that process to not feel that it's almost attacking you to ask for what you are legally entitled to, and Daniela can give me much more of the legal side than I could. But how did you cope with that interrogation process?
It wasn't a pleasant experience most of the time because, like I mentioned before, I really struggle explaining why I need things, and they can see that I'm struggling. So for them, I feel like some people question it even further, like, okay, then you don't sound like you're confident in you actually need things. So I tend to feel like I'm faking it, but it tends to make you feel like a fraud, and you feel like you shouldn't be, you don't deserve these. Like, you just need to get on with it, and even if it means you need to push it a bit more and work harder for it. But again, at Westminster, I could tell that they were aware of it. I don't know how to explain it. Like, being deaf aware of it, I could know that they knew what I was talking about. And sometimes they would even finish my sentence before I even said it, because they already worked with students before me that was like me. So that made it a lot easier and, yeah, more validated as a person, I guess. It made me feel like, okay, they know that I'm not faking it. It's real, and, yeah, and to call it, yeah.
So, again, sort of thinking on of that, do any of you feel that there is any form of hierarchy in terms of the way that disabilities are viewed in terms of support? So obviously for someone in a wheelchair with cystic fibrosis, with a very openly disclosable, you don't even have to say it, you know there's something, and hopefully if we're aware enough, we should know exactly how to adjust for things like that. How do you feel about that hierarchy almost? Do you think one exists? Or have you ever felt like your disability is undervalued relative to others, for example? Andrew, maybe, how do you feel about that? Because I think you've talked a little bit already about the migraines and the seizures that can impact you, which are obviously quite invisible to a large extent. So I was just really interested to hear what you think about, and I know it's a concept that's discussed a lot around disabled networks. How do you feel about that hierarchy?
Well, at work I definitely notice it, but when I was at Westminster I was expecting it to be like that, but it actually wasn't. I only had positive experiences, and that was very comforting, actually.
I'm really pleased to hear that. Really pleased to hear that. At work, you're finding it does impact you a little bit more, though, even although it's an NHS setting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, that's really, really interesting to hear. You'd assume, and maybe that is something that we need to all reflect on, that we're so accepting of everyone in the same way, that inclusion is almost a given, a standard. And I think everyone here has already shown that perception, but perhaps it's slightly different. Sometimes
I will say, though, that when I was at university, it was very difficult during lab practicals. They're a bit chaotic, and I needed to occasionally have breaks, and it was very difficult to get out and have breaks without missing out on anything.
Mm-hmm.
They tended to be quite long, lasting hours, and so many people were in the lab, and it's just a very busy environment, and you have to concentrate, and I found it just almost impossible to do it. So yeah, that was the only real challenge that I had, and whenever I addressed my concerns with my disability, it was, I think, yeah, I don't think it was handled as well as it could have been. But with everything else at the university, I felt like it was great. It's just a lab experience.
Sorry, Claire, I just wanted to add something about the hierarchies of disabilities. I mean, okay, some disabilities are visible, some are hidden, or, you know, not as obvious. But what I've heard from students is that a disability impacts everybody in a different way. So although somebody might have like, very frequent migraines and you think, oh, that's nothing, migraines, it's just a really bad headache, it actually can have a huge impact on them. And therefore, I personally, maybe there is some kind of a hierarchy, but I think it really affects everybody in a different way, no matter what it is. Yeah, whether it's a physical disability or something which is invisible. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
No, I think that's really, really, really valid as well. It really, really is. So I think one of the things that came up just while you were talking, Andrew, as well, and building on what Daniela's just said, in lectures, and a couple of questions have come back asking about difficulties that you might have asking for adjustments, like, for example, recording of lectures and tutorials and seminars. When you're struggling with a chaotic situation like a language class or a lab class, how did you manage that? Did you feel that you could ask for support? So almost for me, Andrew, my immediate thought is you needed to be in a quieter lab setting with fewer people to help you to get around that. Was that sort of opportunity for adjustment or process change something that you felt that you could get access to, or did you feel that it was a difficult adjustment to request sometimes? So for example, smaller tutorial groups or recording of lectures, do you think that those adjustments, which for you would make such a difference and seem like a really easy adjustment to request, did you find sometimes that there was almost a no, closed door, we don't have to do that? Did you ever request that, Andrew, to get a smaller tutorial?
Not a smaller tutorial, but whenever I tried to have lectures recorded, I'd have to continually say that and remind the lecturer. And with other adjustments, it often is a case of having to remind people over again and presenting your, can't remember what it was called, your disability form thing.
Yeah.
Which after a while you get sick of doing, but something you have to do, I guess, unless you establish some kind of relationship with the lecturer where they're more understanding, but sometimes that's not always possible.
So the process change, I think, that we've seen over lockdown, we have to find some positives from COVID. One of them, I'd say, from my perspective at least, is that recording of lectures has become automatic almost, because we're delivering online, so it's automatic. You just hit record. And in my experience, it's not typically the student with a disability who needs the recording who asks us or reminds us if we've forgotten. So there is a voice now, and I hope, hopefully anyone in the audience can correct me if it's not the case, but I do think that it is much more standard. It's not a requirement within tutorials because obviously that's down to the student getting involved. And I don't know, Daniela, whether you've any thoughts on that.
I think sort of the rule is if something confidential is being discussed in the tutorials, it really depends on the subject matter. Then if something confidential is being discussed, then they're not recorded. However, if the tutorials, do not discuss any, really confident or sensitive matters, then they can be recorded, but that the recording of tutorials is to the discretion of the actual lecturers. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is very tough. Yeah. But again, I think if a student has a disability, then, an effort will be made for them to be recorded, but it really varies. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, I'm trying to keep an eye on all the questions, and I'm sure I'm missing lots, but I've just noticed that Maya's put one in the chat, which says that she disclosed her disability when she started university, and things were great setting up. And in the first little time, there was a lot of good contact, but then it's dropped off a little bit. She's on placement at the moment and is really worried that she's going to have to start that whole process again when she returns. So what would you recommend to try to enhance that contact, to make sure that she's got the support that she needs when she comes back from her placement, or even while she's away?
I think, can I just come in here, Claire? Because,
Please.
I mean, I know that students now have to do lots of placement and work-based experience. So what I would suggest to Maya or anybody else is just don't be shy. Just get in touch with the disability services, even while you're on placement, and tell them you might be even struggling while you're on placement. And somebody else, Laura said that she's finishing her degree now, but it's not too late. You can ask for help at any point. So just contact the disability services or your tutor, your personal tutor. Yeah.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And if either of you are in liberal arts and science, please feel free to contact me as disability tutor for the college, and then I can sort of prompt your personal tutors to get in touch and provide that support. It is, I think, one of the really positive things that we've heard from all of the panelists tonight is about reaching out and just asking for that support. From my perspective, I'd far rather be asked for help and then be able to provide it before you need that adjustment, that support because something's gone wrong. But it is very difficult sometimes to know that you can do exactly what you need to and really make the difference within modules that you're not maybe necessarily delivering. But I'm certainly happy always to be the conduit. And if you're not in liberal arts and science, still feel free to get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that you are put in touch with the person that should be helping you to achieve that as well. So I'll put my email up on the side so that you've got that as well, so that we can make sure that you can get that. So I'm just trying to check, sorry, David and Hayden, to make sure I've got this. So the commute, Asher, when you're thinking about the commute to university, it's a really tough thing, and not even just to university, to work as well. How did you find that was there any adjustment needed linked to that, or any opportunity for you to use that time during the commute in an effective way to make sure that you didn't fall behind because of it?
I didn't really use the commuting time to do anything, because I feel like especially when you have a disability, it can be very you're more tired because you have to work harder as well. So sometimes on the when I'm commuting home, I'd be too tired, and then when I get home, I would force myself to re-watch the lectures again, because when I'm in the lecture there are many words that I don't hear, and so I have to watch the lecture again and make sure that I've heard everything, and so it can be very tiring. But I would say if you're commuting, you could perhaps watch your lectures. That could help. But I never used to take my headphones with me, so I can't watch the lectures out loud on the train.
How did you guys feel? Because Andrew, you used to do some incredible commutes as well, if I remember correctly. How did you find that?
Quite difficult. I'd often have focal seizures traveling, but I did have in place a taxi service as part of my adjustments, which was there in emergencies, but I actually used it a few times. But just even knowing that I could use it was helpful, and it made me feel a lot more confident. I even had the possibility of having an assistance dog, but I didn't take that up, but I could have done. So just knowing that those things could be in place was helpful.
It's Brilliant. That's really good to hear. I must admit, I need my commute time to be catching up with reading or emails and things like that. So I'm very glad that I've been able to work in my commute because I know how important that time is. And it is, for me at least, a fantastic benefit that we thankfully no longer have to be quite as busy and crammed up against everybody and their auntie on these trains on the way home, which definitely is making a difference for me and my commutes. So there's a couple of questions linked to some of the example resources that you've used. So Phoebe and Asher, you've both done a co-creators project. And I think Phoebe and Andrew both talked about Change 100. So could I ask you just to give a little bit more insight into those two programs for those listening? Oh, sorry, I've just realised, while I'm chatting, that Alicia has got her hand up as well. Do you want to ask a question first before we hear about these? Let me see if I can unmute you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have access to the chat. So.
Oh, no worries.
It's actually a question to Andrew, because you said about working from home. What has your experience been like to, I guess, find places that are willing to allow you to work from home? Because I know, at least from friends' experience and personal experiences, quite a lot of companies, even now, expect everyone to still go back to the office, even though we've been through the pandemic and we know that working from home is an option. So I guess, what's been your experience with flexibility in that respect?
Oh, you're mute, Andrew. That's the first time. I'm impressed, everyone. You've done well.
I work with Health Education England, and they have this hybrid model now. So it's actually expected that you continue working from home, but you have that flexibility if you want to go to the office. And I know different companies are really different, so I'm not sure how I would manage that. It's somewhere where they completely changed and it was the opposite way around, where you were expected to go in the office even if you had a cold or something else. Yeah, I don't know.
Thanks, Andrew. Alice, it's a really fantastic question, and it's one that we need to be thinking about much more integrally and to the whole employment process. The Equality Act requires employers to make adjustments according to your disability, and those adjustments can be linked to physical things, so whether or not you need a adjustable desk or a loop setting so that we can use our hearing aids, or any number of different things like a ramp, for example. But one of the less well-acknowledged adjustments can be on process. So for a student like Andrew or an employee like Andrew who maybe struggles after a seizure, which might be induced by coming to the office, we can apply for funding to give you a different way to commute in. So things like he mentioned in terms of the taxi service, but we can also request that there's a process change to the way that working environments work. And if that means that you need to work at home, then that is a requirement that you are legally entitled to ask for. And as long as you can be shown to meet your outputs, then there's no way that you can be discriminated against without that adjustment being put in place. So possibly don't disclose that need right at the outset, but then as long as you've disclosed your disability and then introduce that need for the adjustment and the support around it, we can apply for funding to get those adjustments put into place for you. I don't know, Daniela.
I just wanted to tell Alice that, once you're employed, employers need, if you disclose the disability, you can have a needs assessment. It's called workplace needs assessment. In the same way as we do needs assessment for students when they study, you can have workplace needs assessment, and the needs assessor, depending on your disability and needs that you have, can have a set of recommendations, and one of those recommendations can be to work flexibly. 2 days in the office and 3 days at home, or half days. So that is possible. So again, just be very brave, disclose what you have, and do ask your employer for an needs assessment in the workplace. because legally they have to provide that.
Absolutely. And that's
Sorry.
been twisted. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. No, that's all very helpful. I didn't realise that it was,
Yeah.
I guess, something that I could easily ask for.
Yes, you can.
Absolutely. And if you don't get it, do always feel that you can get back in touch with us or an employability team, because they are accessible to you for 2 years after you graduate, and they will support you through trying to make sure that you get the adjustments that you are entitled to. There's also lots and lots of free legal support to help you argue those things. So ACAS is fantastic, for example, at giving you advice on things like that. So I think we need a few more cases with different employers to make sure that there's a precedent set. And as Andrew's just typed in, finding a disability confident employer is a really useful thing to do, whether or not they're signed up or not, whether they might be sort of one of the leaders within those fields. It's a Department of Work and Pensions initiative, and it's something that we need to see more and more movement towards, because ultimately some of the challenges that individuals have seen before our time, so the Disability Discrimination Act, for example, was it 1985, what they've challenged the government to help us to achieve, things like accessible toilets when you go out, it shouldn't be something that we had to fight for at that stage, but they did, and they've got through. But there's still a long, long way for us to go to really make it as equitable for you all as I'd like to see. So sometimes it feels quite difficult to put yourself on the line, but it is definitely worth doing if you can. So just coming back to the question I had before, I know we're running out of time a little bit, but the Co-Creators Project and the Change 100 concept, can you give the viewers, I don't know what to call you now, it's terrible, I feel like friends and colleagues now, can you give them a little bit more guidance about how you access that, what you gained from that maybe? Phoebe's nodding, so I'm going to ask Phoebe to start us off there.
With the co-creator, it was advertised on Blackboard, and from there I got in contact with Claire to get involved with the and then Asha was also getting involved with it. And in the project, it's basically an opportunity for you to collaborate with academic staff. And our project was focused on sharing each of our personal experiences with disability and how we could
Don't worry, Phoebe. Sorry, Asher.
It was a really good experience because we met up every week on Teams to talk about our experiences. The project was about empathy. Yeah, it was about empathy and the experience that we face. And it was just really good because I felt like every week I had something new to tell the group. And it was really good.
Yeah. Might I also add as well, it was something that wasn't biomedical science related. So it was nice to kind of like have something different to do, and it was my first time being a researcher, so getting involved from the research to doing the focus group and data analysis. So it was nice to learn about that and getting to do that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And what about the Change 100, Andrew?
Yeah, so I found out about that through an event at the university, and Change 100 is an opportunity for students with disabilities and recent graduates who are in the same category to apply for an opportunity for a paid internship over the summer period. And they hold, after you do your application, which you can get support through the disability services at the university. After you do your application, you can, if it's successful, you can attend an interview, which I think they do 1 or 2 a year. And then from that, you can have a guaranteed paid internship in the area of study that you're focusing on. And yeah, it's just an amazing experience. And the support you get is really good, and it's appropriate for anyone with any kind of disability, and they're very accommodating. So yeah, I don't know what else to say, but it's just
no, that's brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. So we can certainly ask Janet in the employability team possibly to put something together, and we'll put that onto the ideas pack that we'll send out to everyone to sort of direct you to that support. And potentially we could maybe ask Janet to arrange a session for the university that's based on setting up those sorts of things to get things working. So I can definitely do that with her, which would be great. Laura's asked a question. Thank you, Laura. This is one that really resonates with me. If you have lots of hospital appointments, your employer often asks you to take holiday allowance to do that. And obviously it means that you're reducing the time that you need to relax and recover. That's another example of a really good process adjustment that you can request time, like as long as you're doing your work and meeting all the different needs that you have for the role, taking the time out shouldn't have to come out of your holiday. You can work later to finish a task. You probably already are working later to finish tasks on different things. So there are different ways around that, and actually having that time to make sure that you've got time to have switch off is incredibly important. I like to focus on a life-work balance rather than work-life, and without a healthy life, without a life that is acknowledging all the different challenges that you're experiencing linked to your disability, work are going to lose the benefits that you're giving them from the engagement that you show, the dedication to your role that you show. And what we know is that within the literature that huge numbers of individuals with disabilities are much, much more likely to commit to an employer, to stay there, to really throw themselves in and to work that bit harder because they've been given the opportunity to work there and to benefit from that role. So I think it's always worth fighting back or shouting back and saying, do you know what, I worked late 3 hours last week. This is going to take me half a day. I'm just taking it as time in lieu. So it's definitely worth a process adjustment that you ask for with your employer. And I think if they're not listening, it's not doing the adjustment. Daniela?
Yeah, but no, I just wanted to also say that, Laura, I'm not sure whether you've had occupational health assessment as well, because it's worth having that one as well, especially if you have a chronic condition which requires you, to have these very frequent hospital appointments. So definitely ask your employer for, maybe a renewed occupational health for yourself. And then they will take that into account, how many, appointments you need. And that shouldn't really be taken out of your annual leave. So, yeah, definitely just see what the employer offers to you and how you can proceed with that. Yeah.
Thanks,
Daniela. And all the best with that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I have one last question I'm really keen to ask you all. So when we're thinking about working with other people or meeting other people, often, I think, Phoebe, you mentioned earlier that there's a sort of assumption that they know everything about what you're going through and how your disability affects you. How do you think we can best educate potential colleagues, managers, people that we're working with or interacting with within our lives to make sure that people with a disability, irrespective of what that is, are not nervous about it, not anxious about what that might mean to them, and that they're not excluded in any way? How do you think we could manage that better to help people just to accept you for who you are? You got any ideas, Asher? Sorry, Bibi was going to talk there.
Okay. I think what would really help is giving the individual an opportunity to talk about it in a really safe, comfortable space. Because again, me and Asha are very similar in our hearing loss, but we have completely different experiences growing up with it. So it's important to share that as well with the people you work with. For example, to know that what I'm going through is completely different from Asha. So just talking about it, and also just making conscious effort to be more deaf aware. I think I don't know if they do it like a training deaf and aware thing. If that a thing, that would be great to get all the staff involved so that they can gain some knowledge about it as well.
I think that's a really good. I've done the Deaf Aware course, and I am hearing impaired, and I learn, even although I still have the disability personally, I still learn different adjustments in that. So I completely agree. It's a great idea. Do you have any other ideas, Asher, of anything that you would add?
Yeah, so like be more open about your disability, and sometimes like if you're meeting someone with a disability, it's good to ask them what sort of like how, I don't know how to explain it. How would you want them to treat you? Because sometimes when I tell people that I'm hearing impaired or I'm deaf, their like reaction changes, or they start to talk very slowly, or they make lots of hand movements and stuff. But I know they're not trying to like make me feel a certain way, but I think it's just good to just ask someone how to best to support them. Yeah, if
Brilliant.
that makes sense. Yeah,
It absolutely does. And what about you, Andrew? Have you got any sort of final, this is what to do to help us as people with disabilities, helping others to understand what we can best do to be inclusive with you?
Well, I suppose I can only really speak from my own experience, but because my epilepsy comes from a brain injury, I found it helpful rather than telling everyone all the time, which is exhausting and sometimes you don't want to. I got these cards from Headway, which is a brain injury charity, that just say that sometimes because I have a brain injury, sometimes it can affect my ability to communicate and do things, but please just give me more time and understand. So it's just a card that I can give to people rather than having to explain things all the time.
I think that sounds like a perfect idea.
But I don't know how, in the wider context of so many different disabilities, how you could do that. But yeah, I just agree with what was said about having increased awareness of how different people experience things differently. And I would just repeat what I said about epilepsy, how different people have different kinds of epilepsy, and different with other disabilities, people experience it differently. So it's an awareness of that.
Brilliant. Well, I want to thank you all, both our panellists, our three panellists who've spoken absolutely fantastically tonight about their experiences, but also to all of you for coming along to the event. I hope you've learned from it and have confidence moving forward to own your disability and not be defined by it, but as Peter would say, RVC, to remember that it's your superpower, and you've not achieved this despite your disability. You've achieved what you achieved because of it, because it's given you that extra layer of superpoweredness. So David and Hayden, so the alumni leads that have helped us to organise today. Also huge thanks to you and your team to Alex and everyone else. You've been fantastic. They are going to send you out a survey and ask you to complete that to let us know how it's gone. I'm absolutely delighted that this is the first ever disability focused What It Takes event, and I hope it's the first of many, because I'd really like to sort of continue that empowerment and to try to make sure that this isn't considered as something that may happen, but that we recognise it as the largest minority group that exists, and that it has to become more integral to everything that we do. So I would really love to hear your comments on the survey. This is the last What It Takes event of the academic year, the 21-22, but obviously you can listen back and we will put together some resources for you to send that out. So they'll be on the Alumni YouTube channel, which hopefully David or Hayden can link for us just now, and look out for new events in the autumn so you can hear us again. But thank you again to Asher, Andrew and Phoebe on behalf of Daniela and myself. It's been wonderful to work with them all, and I really do also hope that those of you, I think it was Maya who said you're interested in co-creators, please do feel free to give me an email if there's anything I can help with, and get you involved in that. Would be great. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you very much everyone, and have a nice evening.
I'd just like to add a huge thanks. I'm Hayden from the Alumni team. My colleague David Brooks managed this event with Claire and Daniela, but a huge thanks to Bibi, Asher and Andrew, and of course Claire and Daniela. That was easily the most inspirational What It Takes event that I've ever attended, and I've been involved in all 5 years worth. So shamefully we haven't had a disability related or themed event before, but we certainly will be having another one again. Definitely. And that's thanks to all of you guys. So I really hope you all enjoyed it. And many more will benefit from the recording. So yeah, huge thanks, and have really great evening. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Bibi. Bye, Ashley. Bye, Andrew.